Hello, and welcome to I Hate Talking, a podcast about talking, including etymology, frustrating topics, current events, and other random subjects. I'm Adam.
And I'm Steph. We are married, and we invite you into these discussions with us as we talk about the good and the bad of talking.
We hope you enjoy today's episode. We are here with episode 5 of I Hate Talking, and this is the final one of our first 5-part series where we are introducing our podcast on who, what, where, when, and why. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about why we bother talking at all. But as always, before we do, we are going to talk about our word or phrase of the episode. And today's word or phrase of the episode is a particular word that was used in the previous episode, posit. Posit. So would you care to perhaps tell the audience what you are hearing when I use the word posit?
The first thought that comes to my mind is, did you deposit money into my account?
Interesting. And I also think that there's the potential that you or a person in general could mishear the word and they would hear pause it.
Like pause it. Like pause the show. I'll be right back.
Well, that is not what we're talking about. The word of the episode is posit, which means to assume as a fact or put forward as a basis of an argument. So I would posit to you that there are a variety of reasons that people hate talking, and that's what we're going to address in this episode in terms of why bother talking at all.
But you're still pausing it, right? In that conversation, you're pausing it to have this conversation.
So it would be in similar vein to the word postulate or to put forward. That would be the same, I believe, Greek root that's in here. Nope, I'm actually incorrect. It's Latin root on posit, which means placed. So you are placing this fact in front of somebody.
That's super interesting. So as I've always heard that in the phrase, I posit to you, so in blah, 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 I've always heard that as like, I posit, stop and listen, and then it moves on to this is the important thing. But you're saying I'm placing this in front of you, so listen.
Exactly. So we are talking about presenting a fact or opinion, and that is going to be assumed or suggested that that is true, and then will be therefore the basis of perhaps some debate or back and forth or an argument, and we actually may end up arriving at another reason that people hate talking is just because of the lack of understanding and disagreement on things that are suggested or that are in fact not only suggested, but definitively true.
Paused to you.
And there you have it. So that is our word of the episode that I think is quite applicable to our topic for this episode in terms of continuing to expand on why bother talking at all, as well as potentially some reasons that people hate talking. So why do you talk to people?
Because I love them. I think they're so interesting and I want to hear their conversations. And also, I feel like I have a lot to say and I want people to hear me too.
So, is it for your own personal edification or the edification of the person that you're talking to?
Oh, you can go on this one.
Well, I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, I personally may have the opinion that I'm not going to talk to people. Again, perhaps for the selfish reason that I don't want to talk to them, or I don't find particular intrinsic value in what they're saying, or I don't particularly care to share with them or posit to them my particular opinion or ideas.
I love that. And also, I can definitely see that in you. I talk a lot. There are times that I don't because I don't want to be mistaken or look like a fool saying something. And then maybe the conversation carries on and think, oh man, I should have said that because then I would have looked like I knew what I was talking about.
And that's actually one of the reasons that I enjoy writing more than talking, because I will have the opportunity to find those instances and correct them myself in terms of where I may need to say something or avoid a potential instance where I don't mention something that should be mentioned.
This is maybe a complete rabbit trail, and so you can steer us in a moment. I think about you and I as we're chatting. I'm definitely a verbal processor, and I have a hard time thinking about what I want to say or what I feel unless I'm talking about it. And then halfway through the conversation, I'm like, oh, that was what was really bothering me. Where with you, if you bring up something that bothers you, you're not wanting to necessarily have a conversation about it. Like, this is the facts. This is bothering you.
Very true. And I think that even is applicable in terms of how we're approaching our podcast and recording, where I will have these thoughts and ideas and outlines in my mind that I have thought about for many days at a time and not necessarily have written down, but I have at least practiced in my mind what I'm going to say, because I am not a verbal processor and I am not going to be able to speak on my feet, as it were, but instead need to be prepared in order to have these conversations.
Man, I love you. I wish I could do that. Before starting this podcast, Adam asked me what word I wanted to learn. And I said, I don't know. I thought I would write down a list of words I want to learn and practice this week. And I haven't gotten to it yet. But I think that shows that you're very intentional in your words and your thought process, where I put it off until the moment and then think, okay, now we need to think about this and do this.
And I think it also is reflected in some of our earlier episodes and even within this episode. So for those that are listening and cannot see our studio and cannot see our recording equipment, we actually have our inputs color-coded to be able to indicate who is talking and how long they are talking on a visual scale. So my color is color-coded by green, and my co-host is color-coded by red. And I think when we began this podcast, we expected to see a lot more red on the screen. But in earlier episodes, and even in this episode itself, there is actually a lot more green on the screen.
You definitely said that early on, maybe in the first or second podcast. I remember you commenting on how much more you were talking than I was, which in our daily life is not. Anyone who knows us would be shocked that you talk twice as much as I do on this. Because in real life, I talk probably 4, maybe 5 times more than you.
That probably is true. But on the flip side, perhaps I am internalizing and thinking about things in the same amount, right? So
or more.
Or even more. So I think in terms of how we are processing the world and the particular hardships or celebrations that we are experiencing in our everyday life, that as a verbal processor, you are talking about those things. And as a nonverbal processor, and perhaps there's a word for that other than nonverbal processor, I'm internalizing those things and thinking about those things in the same magnitude, but just not verbally speaking them.
Yeah, definitely. We've referenced before that therapy that we did as a family and looking into highly sensitive people versus not highly sensitive. And a big takeaway we learned in that therapy was I was shocked to hear how you and some of our children are constantly processing and constantly thinking about things. They gave an example of one thing, maybe what do you want to eat for lunch? My initial thought is, well, I had burgers yesterday. Tacos would be great today. Or I'm going to have tacos tonight. Let's do salad for lunch. That's as far as it goes. Where you have infinite more thoughts in your head that come up.
Yes, just even in that theoretical scenario, when you said that question, I immediately thought of what day is today and what day is tomorrow, and if that is a work day or a weekend. And if it is a work day, if I had a lot of meetings around the lunch hour or even during the lunch hour, and if I would even be able to step away for lunch, as well as my particular diet of late, where perhaps I'm doing one meal a day, and am I even going to eat lunch?
That's exhausting.
And you'll notice that I didn't even think about what food I wanted to eat, but just whether I was going to eat at all. And that was all the different things that I was considering.
Man, that's exhausting. And I feel for you and I have so much respect for you and others that have that much thought process. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about, like the why. Because in my head, you're not even saying this out loud. These are things you're talking about in your own brain, whether you're saying this verbal or not. Why are you only wanting this one food or refusing tacos for lunch?
And I think that's something that through these conversations, we can all learn how to process in a more efficient manner. And when that question comes up, just rely on the fact that there's going to be tacos, and we don't really have to think any more beyond that.
Or your wife buys the food and you have to eat it, or it goes to waste.
That's true. And we want to avoid all food waste. So we are talking about why we bother talking at all. To continue on some of the concepts of our last episode as well, with regards to making sure that we can have conversations in our lifetime that are applicable within certain time ranges, we do want to consider that we're not going to be around forever, and we want to make sure that we have those conversations and continue that journey to understanding with those in our lives and those that we love, so that we can be able to have those relationships. So, thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about long term, we are no longer here. I think of, again, I referenced in the past my grandmother, who I have infinite amount of respect for, who's no longer here. It's been almost 20 years since she passed. And I still think of what she said in conversations I've had with her. I don't know if she liked tacos or not. So maybe that's not an ultimate conversation that's important. I do know certain things she's enjoyed watching. I know presidents, whether or not I agree with her or not, that she enjoys. I knew her favorite color. But I think ultimately, is it in, maybe she told me she likes tacos. I know her favorite, she likes chicken salad. I know that. I think of her every time I make that chicken salad for our family, and we all eat it all the time and love it. I don't know of any other food she liked, and I don't know if that matters or not.
I guess it matters if it matters to you. So that is part of the psyche that we will be exploring perhaps in future episodes, in terms of what we value and what we consider to be important, and what we want to be able to discuss with others, and what we want to impart to them in terms of our own experience and learnings and knowledge, as well as those things that they can impart to us.
So why do you want to talk or what do you want people to know that you talk about?
So part of the reason that I talk and in some of the scenarios or social settings that I talk, it is usually to impart particular knowledge or experience based on things that I have either studied or analyzed or experienced, and be able to equip people with that knowledge and expertise and experience so that they can be successful.
I love that. I think it's super interesting because knowing your personality and your career path, imparting that knowledge makes sense. So we have similar education backgrounds, degrees, and such. When I talk to friends, peers, family, I feel like it's more for empathy and relational ICU. You are important as a human being. Where I feel like yours is maybe sharing more knowledge and expertise.
And I think that is also indicative of some of the books that we enjoy, where I will not enjoy narrative as much when it comes to a particular position that somebody is positing to me. That if they use narrative, that I will consider it a struggle to listen to that and give it my full attention, whereas I would be more apt to listen to more data-driven analysis in terms of facts and figures and legitimate examples where this has been proven to be true in terms of how they are supporting their position.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I can think of many people that talk about when they're hearing an author or anyone discuss something and they start giving stats or numbers, their eyes start to glaze over and they just kind of skip ahead 15 seconds to the next thing. Where you would maybe necessarily do that if they're sharing a personal anecdote about their life.
Exactly. Yep. Don't particularly care for an anecdote unless it is globally applicable. If it's just happened to one person at one instance in time, maybe not the best indication that that is a proof of a particular concept or position.
So circling back to why we're saying why people talk, I wonder if it has to do with you value stats, you value statistics and numbers a lot. And I value experience or emotions a lot. So I would talk, my why would be to get to understand the heart, to get to understand their emotion behind what they're feeling. And you would talk to get to understand the reasoning or the logic behind it.
Exactly. So this sounds like it may develop into a future episode that we are going to be discussing narrative versus reasoning in terms of how that impacts conversation and how people talk to one another. But that is a subject for another day. So from your friends at I Hate Talking, remember, it is only through talking that we begin the journey to understanding.